Hi students! So this is your first lecture. It comes from chapter 1. It's the developmental overview and it corresponds with quiz 1. So take a minute here to take a look at the objectives. The ones in red are the ones that the lecture is going to cover, and the ones in black are objectives that you still should know, but we won't spend time talking about in class. Remember that these are lectures that have been recorded from a live class, so sometimes there'll be discussion and things that you won't be able to hear. I've tried to edit a lot of that out and edit out big chunks of discussion that exists from the class. So I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And remember, you can always pause, rewind, and fast forward as needed. So here is chapter 1. We want to start off with a good understanding of what child development is, so that way we can build off of that. So one thing that psychologists really like to do, and you'll see this throughout the entire course, is that they like to take things that are pretty simple and write definitions that are pretty complicated and complex. Okay? This is something that you'll find in a lot of psych courses. So let's just break down what the definition is and what it means based on its different parts. So here we have identify and explain the persistent, cumulative, and progressive changes in the physical, cognitive, and social emotional development of children and adolescents. Okay? So what does that actually mean? What is that telling us? Let's start with persistent, cumulative, and progressive changes. What are those? What would a persistent, cumulative, and progressive change, what would that mean?
Change over time, and
Yeah.
change at the end, and change.
No, you got the first two right. So we're looking at how people change over time. That's the progressive part. Or I'm sorry, the persistent part. It keeps going. We're looking at it at the end. So we talk about children at their state of being, whichever age range that is. So we could be talking about 3-year-olds. And then the progressive piece is that we're moving forward. Okay, so that's the only part there to add on, is that we're increasing in skills, or we're moving forward in something. Okay, and we're talking really here about normative development. Okay, and by normative development, I mean the average developing child. Okay, so persistent, cumulative, and progressive change. How people change as they age. The next piece breaks it down by domain. Okay? So we have physical, cognitive, and social emotional. If we were to study physical development, what would we be looking at? What does that entail?
Biological. Could you say biological?
Yeah, biological, sure. Biological changes, and those include things like what? Puberty, yeah, a huge one for adolescents. Something that makes them a little scary. Yeah. Okay, so puberty would count. How about our younger kids? What are the physical changes there? Height, yeah, definitely, height.
Motor skills.
Motor skills, yeah, gross and fine motor skills, sure. And then there's something that we consider physical development, but that we tend to leave out a lot of times.
Brain development.
Yeah, brain development. Did that come from over here? Awesome, yeah, brain development. So we'll look at changes in neurons, okay, the connectivity between the neurons. How our brain changes and grows, not only in density, but in the types of connections that are made. Okay, the specializations of each area of the brain. Okay, so that's physical. How about cognitive? What does cognitive mean? Thinking, yeah, say it, yeah, thinking. You know it. Thinking, absolutely. Cognitive is thinking. And so you can write that down as maybe a word association that you can use to help you. We're going to hang out in this domain a lot this semester. We're going to talk about how children's thought processes change. Their thinking. So what are some skills or some things that go into that? What could be studied in thinking? Problem solving, yeah. Problem solving.
Language.
Yeah, I'm giving you a clue to that one. Language, sure. And I put language as a special piece up here because sometimes you'll see textbooks or researchers talk about language as its own domain. Okay, so you might see that separated out. But we'll consider language in here to be part of our cognitive process. Yeah, so we have problem solving, we have language.
Memory.
Memory, yeah. Did you say morals? Yeah, we're going to throw morals down here, okay, but we'll come to those. Memory, definitely. Memory and learning. Okay, and we'll talk a lot about memory. Sure. Okay, so when you think cognitive, you're thinking, and we're going to spend a lot of our time in the semester within this domain. Now the last area of study within child development would be the social and the emotional. Okay, so what are we looking at here? What are we talking about with social emotional development?
So like behavior?
There's behaviors involved, sure. Behaviors dealing with what or with who?
People.
People, yeah. That's the social piece. So interacting with other people. Jessica?
Society's rules.
Yeah, so understanding of society's rules, definitely. We would consider that to be social. Yep. And you're thinking a lot like Bronfenbrenner already. Ecological systems. What else could be social and emotional?
Impulse control.
Impulse control, absolutely. Yeah, impulse and emotion regulation. Because I think a lot of those, those two things go hand in hand. Definitely.
Self-concept.
Yeah, self-concept, understanding who I am. Not only who I am, but how I relate to other people. And that's one of the chapters we'll get at later in the semester. Very good. Yeah, one more.
Family style.
Sure, so the family system?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that there are a lot of diverse family systems. And we'll have that play itself out in the school system, big time, and in the classroom. Sure. Okay, so we took a definition that seemed a little complicated and loaded, and we broke it down, okay? So in here, what we're doing is we're looking at how children develop over time. It's persistent, okay? We'll look at the end result, the cumulative piece, how they are moving forward, and in these different areas, their physical growth, their cognitive growth, and then growth as they interact with others, socially and emotionally. Okay, and we'll spend a lot of time in the middle here. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about a few of these questions. These are questions that I want you to think about. So we use these questions to help us kind of think about what the major research issues are that exist in this field. Okay? So let's quickly cover what those are, the 4 basic issues. The first one is the one that you will see played out the most in the study of child development, and that's the nature-nurture debate. Okay? This is the first major issue that we study, and you'll see it in every single chapter that we look at. Okay, so what is this debate? What is the issue here? You have, is it biology that's driving development or outcomes, or is it the environment? Right, nature or nurture, biology or the environment. And this, the terms here, it seems very clear, but I find that students often confuse them. So I like to do word associations, if you haven't noticed. That helps me keep things clear. So which one is the nature? It's the biology. And which one is the nurture? The environment. Yeah. Now, it's kind of easy to get confused. Sometimes we think nature, and you think trees and butterflies and bees, and I don't know, you want to think that it's the environment. Right? But it's genetics, it's biology. Do you see where that can get a little bit confusing? So write them down just so that you make sure you have it clear. Here we're talking about our biology, genetics, and over here we're talking about the environment. Okay, the environment. So whenever we look at any developmental outcome or topic or area of research, we'll have this debate. Okay, what is influencing it more? Is it their genes, or is it the environment that they're in? And there are some really important things to consider when we talk about this, or principles that we want to keep in mind. Okay. So the first one, the effects vary based on the area of development. The areas are the things that we just covered. physical development, cognitive development, social emotional. So the effects of biology versus the environment are going to vary depending on which area of development you're actually studying. Okay? So an example would be drugs and alcohol in a developing fetus. Okay, a mother who's pregnant is going to have effects on physical development, going to have effects on cognitive development, and they're going to be very strong. Okay, those effects are going to be pretty severe. So it varies. And then let's say a teenager who explores with alcohol and drugs a little bit. Are the effects going to be as severe? No. Okay. So we're getting at a couple of these principles here. It's that it varies based on the area, and it's also varies based on the timing. So we talk about this in terms of a sensitive period. Okay, so there are sensitive periods in our development where things in the environment will play a more exaggerated or larger role. Okay? Their effects will be more extreme. So I just gave you one example. Does anybody have another example of a sensitive period in development? What's happening at about a year and a half with children? Starting to walk, that's one. Talk, yeah. This language boom that occurs, right? Learning language. A lot of researchers say that there's a sensitive time for language development. Okay, some don't agree, but a lot of them will say that there's this sensitive period for language development. Okay? So being around a rich language environment would be very important for a 1.5 to 3-year-old. Okay? Okay. Another one of the issues here is that environments, let's start up here. Inherited tendencies can make children more or less responsive to the environment. So we do say in the nature-nurture debate that it starts with the biology, okay, and then builds with the environment. It's just how much of the environment is going to basically play a role.
Okay, so there's a lot of studies with twins that are separated.
Yes, definitely. Milana, right?
Yeah.
Yes, this is how we research the nature-nurture debate is with twin studies. You're absolutely right. So they look at twins who are reared together, twins who are separated and reared in different environments. They look at regular siblings, fraternal and non-fraternal twins. Okay, so they look at all types of genetic overlap that exists between people and then environmental overlap. So when we look at intelligence, for example, we'll look at some twin studies, okay, to determine whether or not intelligence is inherited or it's from the environment. Yeah?
Did you ever look at situations where genetics can't be an issue? Like,
Yes, so those are going to be adopted.
Yeah, like
Yes.
my siblings are both adopted, so
Yep.
none of us are
Same
biological.
environment.
Okay.
No, yep, that's part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right, the last consideration here is that the environment will play a greater role in development when those environmental conditions are extreme. And so that makes sense. If you have, let's say, a very abusive situation for a young child, that's an extreme environment, that's going to override biology, okay, for almost all areas of development. So the more extreme, the more impacts the environment could have. Make sense? All right, let's take a look at the second basic issue here. Universality and diversity. This is our second issue that we study in child development. We have either commonalities that are seen in all children, and so some researchers will look at this, what makes us all the same, and then some developmental researchers are going to look instead at the varied ways in which we progress or we develop. Okay? So what makes us the same versus what makes us different? Here's a really good example. In language development, let's start with what makes us all different. What's something in language development that you can say is very different or varied? What language you speak, sure. What else?
If you're growing up in a household that speaks one language, but you live, like you go to school, like you live in like a Spanish-speaking house, but you go to school in English
Sure. So when you're exposed to multiple languages in different contexts. Yeah. Justin, then we'll come over here.
Dialect.
Dialect, yep.
I was going to say it's also kind of the same, speaking the same language but in different ways. So I guess like maybe in your household, your parents use a common
Particular
phrase
words or phrases
that is common to your house, and then it's still the same language as what's in school, but
Yeah.
you know they don't know that saying, so
Right.
you say it all the time.
And we have that by region too, right?
Yeah.
Things that we say by region. Sure. Does anybody know what their first word was?
Hot.
What was it?
Hot.
Okay.
My grandfather would always, when he would make coffee in the morning, he'd
Oh,
go to
okay.
the stove and say hot.
Hot. Hot. I thought you said pot. I was
Oh,
like,
no.
why are you saying
Something like a pot.
and then she would say coffee, so I assumed coffee pot. She went in a completely different direction in both ways. Another first word.
Owl.
Owl. Yeah.
Owl. No, owl.
Ow. I can't hear you guys.
It's
Ow.
an owl that hurts.
Oh, you're getting hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Another thing we're going to leave alone.
I think mine was dad.
Dad.
Yeah.
I was dad, yeah.
No.
No. No. Okay.
No.
Milk. Yeah.
Mine was Nana.
Nana. So point being that everybody has a different first word, and when you spoke that word was probably much different. There's a big gap or age range between when first words happen for normal developing children. Okay, so we throw out these milestones like by the first year you've got your first word. Some kids are at 8 months, some kids are at 13 months. It doesn't matter. It's all the same, it comes out in the wash. Okay? So this is something that we're all a little bit different on. What is something in language development that we're all the same with? What's a commonality? We all, yeah, sure. So having language is something that is common in humans, definitely. Yeah.
Usually it starts with nonsense and syllables and
And we call that babbling.
yeah.
Yeah, it starts with babbling. Every child begins language development with babbling. Every single one. Even children who learn sign language and can't speak, babble with their hands. Okay, it is one of the first steps in learning and speaking, communicating, and using language. They go, like, I don't know signs, so this is going to be really bad, but let's say this was like a sign, back and forth, between two letters or two words. It's a repetitive motion. It's practicing. Now that happens a lot later. So the time frame is a lot later than someone would be babbling with their mouth, making those sounds. But it's still part of language learning. Yeah?
And they're mimicking. They're mimicking sounds that they hear and trying to produce what they're hearing.
Yeah, I think that would probably also, yeah, be a universal. Sure. Okay, so we have things that make us the same and things that make us different. Stability and change is the third issue. There's really not that much to talk about with this. The idea is that there are some things that stay with us, okay, that are unique to us. Our temperament, those personality traits are said to stay with us. Some biological predispositions or tendencies, maybe the way that we are wired or the way our neurotransmitters communicate, okay, those might stay with us, whereas there are definitely things that make us different. And not us, me, and you, but me now and me later. Okay, and me way later from now. Okay, so we talk a lot about stability and change in the field. Now the last one here, the last major issue, is discontinuity and continuity. Okay? Now I think your text uses these words, qualitative and quantitative. Okay, so I have them both here. They match up with each other respectively. And you can use either term you want. I think that discontinuity and continuity makes a little bit more sense. What we're talking about here is how children grow and change. Okay, so how they develop over time, how they grow and change. So there are some skills that are learned where you can see a difference in the child. It's a big change. And it can be from one moment to the next or one day to the next. It's a big difference. So these are qualitative. Big and new. So I like to think of it like a staircase. Okay? So we're walking up a staircase, we're progressing. And when you are on this step, you are very different than when you are here. So we can look at development in this way. And there are some skills or abilities or changes that occur in these very big steps. Right? This here is one of my favorite things for teaching. Right? This is the aha moment in teaching. So you're working on something, you're working so hard with the student, you're just trying to, maybe it's a math problem, just drilling this in and working on these and the steps that are involved, and you're going and they're struggling, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, I get it. You can live off of those moments as a teacher. You can absolutely live and thrive off of them. Oh, yeah, that's what that is. And this is what we're seeing. He was here, and now he's here, right? So that's our qualitative. Stage theorists will fall into this. So we'll look at a few different stage theorists. PSY is probably the most notable one. He has a stage theory for cognitive development. And he says that they figure these things out in big, giant jumps, okay, that progress them through. Now this one is small and gradual, the quantitative, and so you can think of it like a hill. Okay, so you're just kind of crawling up that hill. It's small, it's little. Each day you're making a little bit of progress, but it's piece by piece, and it's really hard to see the difference from where you were one day to where you were the next day. But it's growing and it's changing. Okay? So reading skills, I think, are a good example to think about here. Learning how to read. Okay, there's lots of different things involved in that. They're practicing every day, and you can turn around one day and see a child or a student reading a book where, you know, it's not as if they weren't practicing reading the day before, the day before, the day before, the day before. But all of a sudden, they're progressing and they're getting better and better. The books are getting more and more challenging. Okay, so you don't always see that big jump. It can be a small, gradual change. Okay? So these are our 4 basic issues that exist in the field of child development. Okay? And we will see these throughout the entire semester. So like I said before, today in this chapter really sets us up for what we're going to be doing as we progress through. Okay? So we have one more objective, and that is to talk about what makes a good teacher. Right? So I want you to, just for a moment, write down on your pages 3 things that contribute to what makes a good teacher. Okay? From your experiences. So, how many of you are going to think about being teachers? You got a big job ahead of you. Did you just hear that list? Like, holy crap. Think about what our teachers do. And I really do truly believe that we have some really great teachers out there. Really fantastic teachers. All of the things that you described. And I know that you've probably encountered some that weren't as great, but I know that the great ones are out there too, working incredibly hard. Okay, doing all of those things that you just said. It's so much. So just like we're going to view children as being capable, I want you to also acknowledge everything that the teacher is doing and the role that the teacher has to play. Okay? There are so many things to these children in so many different ways, and it's a challenging, challenging job. All right, so let's have the same appreciation for the teachers as we do for the children for the semester. Okay? Now, all of the things you just said, they're absolutely correct. So patience, caring, understanding, you know, varied teaching methods, right? But, you know, there's some variation in there. So, you know, I care about you so much. And I really have to do your homework. Are you feeling okay today? Does your belly hurt? You all right? You did a great job on your assignment. I'm so proud of you. You're paying attention so well. This is great. Yeah. Right? Is that appropriate?
Well,
Am I
maybe they're,
being
like,
caring?
3.
Am I being understanding? Yeah.
Let's not build boundaries though.
Boundaries, sure. Is it appropriate for you guys?
No.
No. It is not appropriate for you guys. But if I said that maybe to a 3-year-old or a 3rd grader that you did great on your assignment, would it be appropriate?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what do we call that? Thank you. Say it again.
Developmentally appropriate.
Fantastic.
What was
Developmentally appropriate.
It was your tone though a little bit too. I mean, because
It is,
if
yeah.
you were to say you did a pretty good job on that, you did a great job on that assignment,
Sure.
but it was the tone you used.
Yeah, and so as you're running out the door, I might be, what's your first name?
Kenny.
Kenny. I would be like, Kenny, awesome job. I can tell you worked hard on that.
But if you were like, awesome job.
You did
yeah.
so good.
It's
Right.
different.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that's part of it. That's part of our interaction, you know? And I would never ask a student if their tummy hurt. But if you were in 1st grade or kindergarten, I might, because you're probably going to throw up on me. Reality. Right? So this is developmentally appropriate practice. Take all those things that you just listed as what makes a good teacher and think about them in terms of the developmental level of the students that you have in front of you. Okay? So that's what we're going to work for this semester, is understanding developmentally appropriate practice. Yes, caring, patience, varying my teaching methods. All of these things make a good teacher, but they only make a good teacher when they're appropriate to the students that you're teaching. Okay, when they're done so in such a way that's developmentally appropriate. Is a hard teacher a good teacher or a bad teacher?
Depends.
Hard, difficult, high standards.
Well, no.
Depends.
Depends. Yeah.
Well, I think having high standards is good if you're giving them the material and you're helping them achieve those standards.
Yeah.
If you just hand them something that they don't
Can't
know,
do.
then that's not helping them. That's making them feel very small and
Sure.
that they can't do something. But if you give them the material and you give them the support to
That
do
they
it and
need.
learn it, then they will do great.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the other way that we could phrase this is the easy teacher the good teacher? How many of you have taken a college course because you've heard that the teacher's easy? Yeah, right. I mean, we do some of this, but that doesn't mean it's the good teacher, right? Please agree with me. Absolutely. You will learn more when you are challenged, as long as there are supports to get you there. And that's also part of developmentally appropriate practice. Okay? Always pushing the student to the next piece, the next cognitive gain, the next challenge that they can succeed at. But having things there to help them get to it. Right? Well, how am I going to know that if I don't know that, normal cognitive skill range of a 5-year-old? How am I going to know? I won't. I won't be able to challenge them effectively. It's not going to happen. So what we're going to do is take the child developmental piece. We're going to learn what children's thinking looks like in each of these different age ranges so that we can know how to push them, how to get them to do a little bit more. What an appropriate method would be. What tricks I should have in my bag. Okay, what their attention span is. What their motivations are. All of these things so that we can fit this developmentally appropriate practice. And for those of you who are not teachers, think of it from the perspective of a student. Okay, same idea. Right? So let us prepare for this developmentally appropriate practice. And this is something that Tess said. You want to work with children's strengths. Right? Find out what they're good at, also their weaknesses. Okay? And you won't be able to identify those if you don't know the norms. If you don't know the normative development, it'll be difficult for you to understand what they're good at, what they're bad at, what's normal, what's not normal. Recognizing children's immaturity is serving a purpose is a big one. So it's really just that understanding again of where they are, and so that we're not expecting too much from them, and that we can work with the skills that they have. They're capable. They have particular skills. 3-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds with their sociodramatic play, their imaginative play, blows me away time after time when I watch groups of children. And if I, as a teacher, can tap into that, sure, they're playing make-believe. That's immature, right? No, it's not. It's amazing. And they're role-playing, and they're understanding societal norms, and they're practicing not only roles, but also some level of abstract and advanced thinking. They're planning, okay? Meeting diverse needs. This is context and culture. We didn't talk too much about this because this was Bronfenbrenner. Okay, so understanding the context that children are in. So definitely make a note of that. But that's one of the ways that you can prepare for developmentally appropriate practice. And nudging them towards advanced thinking, pushing towards the challenge. If you were all going to be teachers, I would want you to be hard teachers. That is one thing that I really feel passionately about, that we need to have high standards. And we need to keep pushing our students. We just need to do so in a way that they will succeed, where we're giving them the support that they need to get there. Okay? All right, so at the end of every class, you will see a summary slide. Covers what we did and what we didn't do, so it's a good thing to recap on.
Hey students, so that was the lecture for Chapter 1. It came from the live class, and so there were big chunks that were taken out for student discussion. I tried to put in some PowerPoint slides there that stood alone, that indicated to you what the students were talking about during that portion of time, so you can still follow along. Make sure to take a look here at the summary, what we did, what we didn't do. That way you can know all of the objectives that you're responsible for. And please know there will be similar lectures available to you for the subsequent chapters.